Imagine your lips touching someone else's. Saliva mix, breaths mingle, your heartbeat quickens, and your hands don't know where to go. Now, look at this scene, as if you were an outside observer, for example, through the eyes of a scientist who has never seen a human being and has no cultural biases. Normally, this behavior is thought to be extremely natural, universal, and something every person knows. Instinctively just, like smiling, crying, or showing that you're hungry. But the truth is much stranger and much more striking than you might think, because kissing is actually not universal at all, and that, in itself, is a surprising fact. In 2015, Anthropology's William Yankowiak and his team published a comprehensive study that examined 168 different cultures from start to finish, and the results were truly striking. Romantic, sexually motivated kissing was observed in only about 46% of these cultures. In other words, nearly half of humanity has never used kissing as a ritual of love throughout history. They've never felt the need to, and it's never even crossed their minds. So we is that. Why do horses behave the same way everywhere, while humans differ so much even within their own species? Among some Central African communities, some Amazonian tribes, and some New Guinean peoples, kissing either did not exist at all, or was viewed as a strange, even outright repulsive behavior. Early anthropological observations noted that when these communities were first shown the act of kissing, their reaction was one of astonishment and discomfort. They responded with questions such as, "Why are you sharing each other's saliva?" or "Why are you eating each other's spit?" Some even perceived it as almost a violation of hygiene. This finding fundamentally challenges the assumption that kissing is a natural and universal instinct, because if it were truly instinctive, just like the sucking reflex or blinking, it would have to emerge automatically in every culture without being taught. But it doesn't. This leads us to a much deeper, much more intriguing question. If kissing is not a universal instinct, where did it come from? What need gave rise to it, and why has it taken such a strong hold in some societies while leaving no trace at all in others? To find the answer to this question, we need to take a step back in time to one of humanity's most basic, most animalistic, and least romantic behaviors. One theory traces the origins of kissing directly to the behavior of feeding. Chimpanzees and bonobos transfer pre-chewed food to their young from mouth to mouth, a behavior known in scientific terms as premastication, which was also extremely common in ancient human communities and was even still practiced in some traditional societies. Until recently, when a mother softens food in her own mouth and transfers it to her baby's mouth, their lips touch, creating a close, warm, and secure physical connection. This builds a sense of trust and comfort in the baby's brain, and the mouth becomes the closest, most intimate point of contact with the person who ensures the baby's survival. Some researchers suggest that romantic kissing may be a reshaped, recoded version of this parent-child behavior among adults. In other words, the sense of trust, intimacy, and attachment triggered by the brain during a kiss may actually be borrowing from a much older, much more fundamental parental circuit. Rather than inventing a new behavior, the brain may be reusing a system that already exists. This is not yet an established scientific fact, but from a biological perspective, it's a quite plausible and elegant explanation. So why the lips? Why this specific area, and not some other part of the body? This is where a truly fascinating detail of human biology comes into play. Human lips are unusually sensitive and protruding compared to those of other mammals. In most mammals, the lips are curled inward toward the mouth, are less visible, and contain fewer nerve endings. Human lips, on the other hand, are curled outward, covered with very thin skin, and contain an incredibly high density of nerve endings, so much so that our lips have become a tactile organ as sensitive as our fingertips. This is no coincidence. On the map of the brain's somatosensory cortex, that famous map showing how much space each part of the body occupies in the brain, the lips take up a disproportionately large area. Scientists call this map the homunculus map, and on it, the lips along with the hands and genitalia, among the regions with the largest shares, occupying what seems like a massive area compared to the rest of the body. In other words, our lips are extremely sensitive, as if they were specifically designed to respond to touch. And when two pairs of lips touch, an incredible flood of sensory information begins flowing to the brain within seconds. Now, let's get to the chemical side of things, because kissing isn't just an emotional gesture, it's literally a biological exchange of information, almost like a secret laboratory experiment. A study conducted in 2013 showed that during a kiss lasting just 10 seconds, people exchange millions of bacteria through saliva. This may seem disgusting at first glance, but some scientists believe it actually serves an important purpose. Exchanging saliva may be a way to unconsciously gather information about a potential partner's immune system. Signals related to immune genes known as the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC for short, are present in body odor and saliva chemistry, and some studies suggest that people are unconsciously drawn to partners with MHC profiles that are genetically different from their own, as this could mean having children with more diverse and stronger immune systems. In other words, kissing may serve as more than just a romantic gesture. It may function as a covert biological compatibility test, a mechanism through which the brain silently attempts to answer the question, is this person genetically compatible with me? Via saliva. The chemistry of kissing doesn't end there, because during a kiss, the body releases multiple hormones at the same time. It's almost like a mini chemical storm. Oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding and trust, increases. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to the pleasure and reward system, also increases. Cortisol, the stress hormone, decreases significantly. This three-part combination turns kissing into a genuine reward cycle in the brain. Some researchers suggest that it uses neural pathways similar to those involved in addictive behaviors, though, of course, at a much milder and far less harmful level. Research also shows that couples who kiss regularly experience lower stress levels and significantly higher relationship satisfaction. In other words, kissing is not just a ritual to start things off. It functions as a continuous, almost invisible mechanism that keeps the bond alive in long-term relationships. So, when exactly did this behavior begin? Archaeological evidence is somewhat limited here, because kissing is not a behavior that fossilizes it, leaves no physical traces behind. But there is indirect evidence, and it goes back much further than we thought. A study published in 2022 revealed that depictions of romantic kissing, dating back approximately 4,500 years, were found on clay tablets in Mesopotamia, much earlier date than previously thought. Researchers suggest that kissing is likely not a behavior that was invented in a single culture and then spread throughout the world. Rather, it may have emerged spontaneously, many times over, completely independently in different societies. In other words, kissing may not have been invented just once, but was rediscovered many times throughout history by human communities unaware of one another. This brings us to a truly interesting point. If kissing is neither universal nor has it emerged independently on multiple occasions, then this behavior is likely not a cultural invention, but rather the activation of a biological potential at different times and in different places. The infrastructure that makes kissing possible is already in place in our brains and bodies. It's just that not every culture has discovered it and turned it into a ritual. So why haven't some cultures discovered it at all? Ecology and the harsh conditions of daily life may also come into play here. Some anthropologists suggest that kissing may require a certain amount of free time and a relative level of security. In communities constantly struggling to survive and facing constant hunger and danger, such slow, tender rituals of intimacy may not be a priority. Now, let's take a look at the animal world, because behaviors similar to kissing exist outside of humans as well, and this tells us a great deal. Bonobos, one of our closest relatives, engage in long, deep kisses with one another, even using their tongues. This behavior is actively used in bonobo societies to reduce social tension, diffuse conflicts, and form bonds. Chimpanzees also exhibit kissing-like behaviors, but these are less common and are primarily used for reconciliation or greeting, rather than in a romantic context. This suggests that the origins of kissing may date back much further than the human lineage, all the way to our common ancestors. But interestingly, many other species do not exhibit this behavior at all. Cats, dogs, and birds do not do this because their bonding systems are based entirely on different signals. Sniffing, grooming, vocalizations, and mutual care behaviors. This shows that kissing is not a universal animal bonding behavior, but rather a very specific mechanism that arises in species with a specific lineage and a specific social and biological structure. So why does kissing feel so normal and so universal today, even though it isn't actually universal? The answer likely lies in globalization. The rapid worldwide spread of Western cultures, particularly those of Europe and North America, through film, television, and popular culture, has introduced kissing to cultures that were previously unfamiliar with this behavior. So this universal culture of kissing that we see today is actually quite new. It may largely be a product of the past century and a half. This creates a truly interesting paradox. Kissing is based on an incredibly ancient biological potential, the sensitivity of the lips, hormonal responses, and a possible immune testing mechanism, yet as a cultural ritual. It is much newer and far less universal than it appears. There's also the social aspect. Kissing isn't just between two lovers. Throughout history, it has also been used to signify status and hierarchy. In medieval Europe, kissing the hand was a sign of respect. In some cultures, kissing the feet was an expression of absolute submission. Kissing within the family, kissing on the cheek among friends, and kissing during religious rituals all are actually different social reinterpretations of the same basic biological behavior. And right here is where the most touching part of this story comes to light. Imagine that, on the other side of the world, 4,500 years ago, an artisan was carving two figures onto a clay tablet, their lips touching, and that artisan likely never imagined that, thousands of years later, on a continent he'd never known, in a language he'd never heard, it would still carry the same meaning. Somewhere today, someone who takes another person's hand and brings their lips close to it is, without realizing it, simultaneously reenacting in a single gesture a primitive mother feeding her baby. That ancient gesture of a bonobo soothing tension, and an unconscious immune system test seeking a genetically compatible mate. Our lips actually evolved for eating, but somehow, over time, they became the place where love is expressed most intensely and tenderly. Perhaps the strangest, most beautiful truth is this: kissing, purely emotional and social invention, with no survival necessity, is both incredibly ancient and much newer than it appears. A strange contradiction that embraces all of humanity yet belongs only to half of it. And perhaps that's exactly why. The next time you kiss someone or see a couple kissing, you'll no longer focus on how ordinary it seems, but rather on how strange, how ancient, how scientific, and how special it actually is.